My name is Ninan Eusani. I'm a registered nurse and I'm trained as a lactation counselor, doula, and childbirth educator. And for over 10 years, I worked as the program coordinator of the Healthy Start Family Spirit, as well as the maternal infant health programs and the early Head Start programs at American Indian Health and Family Services in Detroit, which is an affiliate program of Intertribal Council of Michigan. And I worked with pregnant parents, infants and toddlers, as well as older children from families with a wide variety of diverse backgrounds. And currently I work as an immunization nurse and a health educator and consultant in the fields of pregnancy, postpartum, infant health, and lactation. And I'm also the parent of 2 children, ages 7 and 3. During this presentation, I'm going to be talking about using a conversational approach in talking about safe sleep, infant safe sleep with families. So this is essentially using motivational interviewing techniques such as listening, asking open-ended questions, validating and affirming what families have to say, and then offering education when appropriate and when families are open to receiving it. And I'll also be talking about my experience using techniques such as humor, sharing personal experiences when appropriate, and also approaching this topic, and really all topics with families, with cultural humility. And I want to share some of what I had the opportunity to learn as a non-Indigenous person working in Indigenous communities about traditions and teachings around infant safe sleep. And I want to be clear that as a non-Indigenous person, my knowledge in this area is very incomplete, but I'm really grateful for the opportunities I had to learn from teachers and colleagues and families around this topic because I think so much of this information and this approach can be really beneficial for many families. So many parents have told me something similar to this, that they feel like they have to lie to the pediatrician or the nurse or the social worker or the home visitor, whoever it is. And it really speaks to me as to why using the conversational approach is so important. When we just transmit information and ask closed-ended questions on a checklist, it often feels safest and easiest for parents to just tell us the right answers or what they know we want to hear. But when that happens, we lose the opportunity to learn about the family's situation and concerns, and we lose the possibility to help them address any barriers they might have to changing the infant's sleep situation. And we also lose the opportunity to gain their trust, and they lose the chance to gain any new information or perspectives that we might have access to. So there are a lot of different barriers to infant safe sleep as we think about it, kind of the ideal infant safe sleep environment. There are a lot of barriers that families have around that. And 2 that I particularly want to talk about today are lack of resources and culturally inappropriate messaging. So you can't put the baby in the crib if you don't have a crib. And someone helping you get a crib may or may not solve that problem if you don't have room for a crib in your apartment. Or someone may get you a pack and play and you may not have room for a pack and play in your friend's living room where you're sleeping on the couch with your 2 other kids and where your friend is already complaining about how much room your stuff is taking up. So there are definitely a wide variety of resources for families to obtain pack and plays or similar products, but we need to think about how accessible they are. Do they require transportation to get to and maybe time off work? What are parents expected to do for childcare while they maybe attend a class in order to receive the pack and play? Is the class available in any language other than English? What about accessibility for blind or deaf parents? So if we really want to help families address these barriers, we have to do a lot of listening and asking open-ended questions and establishing enough trust for them to tell us what they actually need. And then we need to be able to do a lot of supporting around problem solving in order to help them figure out how to get what they really need. In terms of approaching the conversation with cultural humility, thinking about the materials we're using, what do they look like, what's the language like, so are we representing Black families, Indigenous families, Latinx families, Asian families, Middle Eastern families? Are men being represented as caregivers as well as women? What about non-binary parents? Are we showing same-gender couples, or are we always showing a mom and a dad? Are we showing other primary caregivers like grandparents or aunties? And does the language used acknowledge that not all people who give birth to and nurse babies are women? So does it use words like lactation or human milk feeding or chest feeding in addition to breastfeeding? What language are the materials in? Are we even giving families materials in languages they can read? And then sort of beyond what I see as those very initial barriers, have we talked with families about what infant sleep is like in their culture and what parents or grandparents or other important people have passed on to them about how their baby should sleep? So this involves a lot of listening and asking open-ended questions. And it's very difficult because we have to start with the premise, or it can be very difficult. We have to start with the premise that there's not one right way to do things, and that we might not, what we know might not be the right way for this family. But if we can come with and stay present with this humility, there's often so much possibility to find alignment between cultural wisdom and best practices from healthcare. During my time working with the Intertribal Council of Michigan's Healthy Start Project, I had the opportunity to take the Healthy Native Babies training and work with this model and materials. The materials are really beautiful and welcoming to indigenous families, and the model is one of risk reduction that can really be used with families of any background. And most importantly, it acknowledges the cultural context of safe sleep practices, for example, by talking about cradle boards, which are such a great example of traditional practice of infant safe sleep, babies sleeping flat on their backs on a firm surface that's portable and that can go wherever family members are. It's a great way to talk about how what we know about safe sleep is actually based in indigenous traditional knowledge. And whether or not the family we're working with has that particular practice in their family's recent knowledge or not, we can share with them that we have learned from and respect that knowledge. So related to using this curriculum, Intertribal Council has been able to fund and host cradle board making workshops for families and community members. And this has been a great way for Indigenous families to get to create their own safe sleep environment for their baby, which is crafted with love and cultural teachings and connects parents and babies with ancestral practices and traditions. And just imagine how much more invested these families are in the ideas behind safe sleep when it has all of this important meaning. So this has been really beautiful and amazing to get to watch. But even when we don't have access to workshops like this, we can offer families, we can engage in conversations where we talk about what are safe sleep practices like in your culture, what are the ways that you might have access to those now. Are there family members or elders or community members who can teach you more about those? And again, to emphasize that we have learned from those traditional practices to inform what we talk about today. One of the activities that I really feel like is really impactful from the Healthy Native Babies curriculum asks participants, often in a group setting, could be in a home visit or in a clinic setting, but often like in a group like a childbirth education class or a safe sleep class, to place activities such as smoking, nursing babies, giving pacifiers, putting stuffed animals in the crib, to put those all on this continuum between safer and less safe, or reducing risk and increasing risk. So while the baby's sleeping either on their own crib or in a cradle board, flat on their back with no other items might be at the far end of the continuum, it really gives families a visual of how they can do lots of different things to reduce risk or eliminate some of the increased risk activities. So as I shared, my background is as a home visitor, and I think that we do have a unique role that's very different from other professionals who might see families in clinic settings or office settings, because we meet family and household members who might never attend clinic visits, and we witness things that families may not mention or feel comfortable talking about. So we can smell cigarette smoke, whether or not anyone has disclosed that there's a smoker in the home. We might hear sounds of violence in the neighborhood. We might see peeling lead paint. We might notice that there are no smoke detectors, or hear the chirp letting us know that the smoke detectors haven't had the batteries changed in a long time. We might feel a cold draft when the heat's been shut off and the families might not have access to heat in the house. So I'm going to talk about some examples of things I've witnessed as a home visitor and ways that I've tried to engage with families around them. So the full pack and play, the pack and play that's full of lots of things that aren't the baby, is something I've seen many times when I walked into homes. And it's important to note that just because we see that, we shouldn't assume that the baby doesn't sleep there. Storage space may be lacking, so the family may take the laundry and other items out every time they put the baby down to sleep. So we need to use what we see as a conversation starter without assumptions or judgments. In one particular family I'd known for a long time, I said to the parents something like, I know with a newborn and 3 other young kids, the laundry never ends, and the pack and play seems like it's probably a great place to put it during the day when there's so much going on. Does that ever make it hard to take it out later so the baby can sleep there? And the mom then said that she felt like she was often just having the baby sleep in the bed with her and using the pack and play for storage. And I think it was easier to her to kind of admit to that because I'd given her permission to blame this on needing the pack and play for storage. I asked her to tell me more about how they came to that decision of the baby sleeping in the bed with her, and she said that there was no room in her bedroom, which was upstairs, for the pack and play, and that she didn't want to put the baby in the pack and play on the first floor so far away from her at night, so she worried about not hearing him cry, and also she thought about having to walk up and down the stairs multiple times during the night to breastfeed. So those were reasons that it seemed like it just made a lot more sense for the baby to be in the bed with her. So after listening to that, I wanted to start by really validating her concerns. That completely makes sense that she wouldn't want the baby to be far away because she'd want to hear him cry. And it's so wonderful that she's breastfeeding him. And I know as a nursing mom, it's exhausting already to get up multiple times in the night, much less to have to go up and down stairs. And so I understand that she would do what she was doing, have the baby sleep in the bed with her, because she was trying to make the best and safest choices for everyone. So after we talked through those difficulties of the situation, then she was open to doing some brainstorming about what might work. So we took a look at her room, which was definitely too small to have the pack and play, and we figured out that they could probably fit a bassinet, which was much smaller. And she actually was able to get a bassinet passed on from a family member, and a week later the situation was that the baby was sleeping in the bassinet in mom's room instead of in bed with her. And this was a situation where I had known the family, I'd known the parent during pregnancy, and I knew that safe sleep was something the mom knew about and cared about, and made sure to get a pack and play before the baby was born. But we had to go beyond just, having the pieces in place and figuring out what would actually work for the family. And then this particular family, because we had a good relationship, it was the kind of thing where I was able to use humor. So if I walked in and saw a situation like this, the mom would say, "Oh, I know what you're going to say already. Don't tell me." And I'd just kind of say, "Oh, I see it's that kind of day." And we'd be able to laugh together. And it helped to really let her know that I wasn't there to judge her, and that I appreciated how challenging parenting is, and that sometimes you have to just laugh and figure out a different way to do things. I've seen babies sleeping on couches so often when I go for home visits, and we know that couches are one of the most dangerous places for babies to sleep, but they're also often the most convenient for parents. If the parent has to be taking care of other children, making lunch, doing dishes, folding laundry, it's really easy to just put the baby down on the couch where they can be within earshot and often eyesight. So we have to be prepared to appreciate and acknowledge those concerns. One particular home visit where I walked in and I saw the baby on the couch sleeping like this, I started the conversation by saying something like, "I can imagine it's really hard to figure out where to put her down when you have so much else to do. So talk to me about is this how nap time usually looks? Where do you usually put her down for nap? What did today look like? How did you decide to put her down there today? And the mom in this situation said that she usually put the baby upstairs in the crib, but today she was just having her sleep on the couch because she was nearby and she could see her the whole time while she was doing other things. So, after listening to all of that, I, of course, started with validating her experience and her concerns. First of all, it's really great that she has a crib and that is the regular place for naps, because that's a very safe way for the baby to sleep. And also, I could see that she was thinking about safety today because she put a pillow next to the baby because she was concerned about the baby rolling off the couch and falling on the floor. So after we had talked about that, I was able to share some information about how couches can be especially risky for babies because of the possibility of rolling into the spaces in between cushions, and how it can be really easy to miss this. That can happen really quickly when you just have to step into the kitchen for a few minutes or take a phone call, and how quickly that can happen, and you can miss it even when you're close by. So I asked her if she'd be open to talking about other things we could do to make the situation safer. And we did some problem solving around what would work for the mom at those times when she did want the baby to be close by, and so she wanted to keep her downstairs during a nap. And we came up with the possibility that mom felt like she could just put a blanket on the floor where the baby could be close by and she could see her, but she wouldn't have that danger of being on the couch. Seeing a baby sleeping in a swing or a bouncer is still really common, even after the recall of the Fisher-Price Rock and Play and the other incline sleepers that happened in 2019. It's still really common that these products look really great and helpful to families. So a lot of families will put their baby in there, either if they're not planning for them to sleep, they just put them down and the baby falls asleep, or they may put them in there to soothe them to sleep, and then there's just a really big temptation to leave them there as opposed to moving them and risking waking them up. A particular scenario that I encountered with a family was with a parent who really was aware of the dangers of infant suffocation, and her big fear was about her baby rolling over and suffocating in the crib. So she put him in the swing because she felt like she was actually keeping him safer by having him strapped in so he couldn't roll over. And this was a really tough one because she had a lot of fear around this, and that fear made it difficult for her to take in new information about how the swing was actually probably less safe. And in fact, she was really defensive about it at first, which makes sense because she felt like she was doing, in kind of a scary situation, she was doing everything she could to keep her baby safe. And so to be told that that wasn't the best thing was not something she wanted to hear. So I really had to remind myself repeatedly to step back from always wanting to educate her and just spend a lot more time listening to her and asking open-ended questions and really getting a picture of what her fears were and why she decided that the swing was the safe thing. And this wasn't something where we could resolve this in one home visit. This conversation continued over several home visits. And often I would just end up leaving and saying, okay, thank you for talking about this with me for today. I really appreciate you being open to talking about this, and leaving knowing that the baby was still sleeping in the swing when I left. But over time, I was able to slowly share more information with her about the risks of sleeping on an inclined surface and about the possibility of the baby rolling over while strapped into the swing and how that could be dangerous. And the last time that I saw her, she said that she had moved from him always sleeping in the swing to sleeping in the crib about half the time. And this felt like a really important step, really important movement, since previously he'd been in the swing every sleep time. And I think about this as kind of similar to quitting smoking. So if a parent's able to go from smoking a pack a day down to half a pack a day, that's a huge success. Even though our goal obviously is quitting completely, it's really important to celebrate these victories and this being open to change and meet them where they're at. So babies sleeping in the car seat out of the car is a difficult one because, of course, as parents, we think of car seats as being the place to put our babies so they can be safe. In particular, I'd have this experience where I would sometimes meet families at the office or have them come in for a class or a play group, and the baby would be asleep in the car seat, and I'd find myself in the awkward position of saying, "Thank you so much, I really appreciate you coming in here to see us, and now can you please wake up your sleeping baby and take them out of the car seat?" So for some parents, it was helpful to talk about the fact that car seats are safety tested before we buy them, and that none of us would buy a car seat that wasn't safety tested or that didn't pass the test. But when they're not locked into position in the car, we just don't have those kind of guarantees that the car seat is safe. Also, I think it's really important to provide alternatives for when families are out in the world. In my program, we used to host a regular play group, and we realized that we'd frequently have families come with babies and older kids, and the babies would be sleepy and the older kids would want to go play. So the families would put the babies in the car seats so that they could sleep and the parents could interact with their toddler or their preschooler. So of course we'd want to acknowledge and validate that it's so great that the parent is wanting to spend one-on-one time with the older child and give them special attention and have playtime together. And then we would also provide pack and plays available, set up in a quiet corner of the room for the parents to put the babies down. And when we decided to do this, we wanted to make it very much that we weren't singling any families out. So we would put up signs about it, and we would make announcements about it at the beginning of every group so that everyone would know that this is kind of our practice and this is what we do. And whenever we saw parents starting to get their sleepy baby settled in the car seat, we would be very helpful and come over and say, "Oh, let me help you get them into the pack and play and get them settled down. And do you want me to stay by them a few minutes to make sure that they're really sleeping so you can go play with your older child?" And I think it's really important that we need to think about providing these kinds of spaces and providing these kind of options in public places in general, but especially in places where we expect parents to bring their babies, such as healthcare providers' offices or any place where we're asking parents to come where they're going to have young children. We need to give them options for babies to sleep safely. So this family put the baby to bed in the crib. They're on their back. They really feel like they're doing all the right things. They're doing it the right way. And they have cute matching pillows and blankets. So in this scenario I've encountered with many parents, I always make sure to validate all of the risk decreasing steps that they've already done. And this is also a place where resource distribution can be so useful. As a home visitor, I usually had sleep sacks in my home visiting bag, so then I could say, "This is so adorable, the way she's sleeping, and you have everything set up so nicely. Would you like to have this sleep sack?" So you can put the sleep sack on her so she can stay warm and cozy, and you won't need the blanket, and you won't have to worry about the blanket accidentally being pulled over her face and becoming a risk to her. And we would give them as gifts to all the families we visited who were pregnant or had new babies to really encourage and normalize their usage. And it totally makes sense that families are concerned about being cold because we live in Michigan and we have really cold winters. And so I would really make sure to validate that. And this is a place where sometimes I'd share the personal story that we keep the heat down really low in the winter at night. And when my older daughter was little, sometimes in the winter, I'd put her to bed with a onesie, pants, 2 layers of pajamas, and a sleep sack. And, just to say like, hey, like I've been in this situation and what can we do creatively to figure this out? And so, to give parents kind of a real life example of what you can do without having to use blankets. And also to connect with families that I share their concerns. And I feel like, especially in an intimate setting like home visiting, it can be really helpful to help to build trust, to share some of my own experience with this. And before I was a parent, I would sometimes share, this is what I saw my sister do with her baby. All to say that you don't have to be a parent in order to be able to share this kind of personal experience in a way that can be helpful to families and help build trust with them. So I also think it's really important to be honest with families about bed sharing, and that we know that many families choose to do it, and to talk about it as being part of the continuum of safety. So it's important to ask about and listen to the reasons families give for choosing bed sharing, and to respect those reasons. Reasons like their own parents did it when they were babies, or they're anxious about the baby being away from them during the night, and getting up multiple times to feed the baby feels stressful and exhausting. So we can let families know that we understand those reasons and we respect their decision making, and we want them to have the information, all the information, to make the best decision for them, including the tools to do bed sharing in the safest way possible. So in the situation where the baby's in the bed with the parent on the flat surface without the extra blankets or pillows, and without being close to the wall where they could fall between the bed and the wall, for some families that is the best and the safest way for the baby to sleep. I found that when I start the conversation with those things really clear, the parents are much more likely to listen to what I have to say. And one family in particular I worked with, the parents and I talked this all through, and they were really open and interested in hearing everything I had to say about safe sleep. And in the end, they ended up saying, okay, we've decided we want to keep the baby in bed with us. We're not interested in doing the crib or the pack and play, but we hadn't realized that there were safer and less safe ways to do that. So we appreciate having that information. And I think there's similarity here with other issues that we educate families about, like vaccines, where of course what I want is for my clients to fully vaccinate their children on schedule, but I can't make that choice for them. So the goal is fully informed consent, where the family makes the choice with as much information and context as possible to be able to help them make the healthiest and safest choice. And in some cases, in talking about safe sleep, when the parent is nursing and no one smokes or uses other drugs in the household, this may be the safest and best choice for them. And we need to be able to be prepared to honor that, to honor when they tell us that. I've learned so much from all of the families that I've worked with, and just am really humbled by all of the times that I've been welcomed into families' homes and their willingness to be open and honest, and to discuss their concerns in a real way. So I'm really grateful for that. And I'm really grateful for all the opportunities I've had to learn about traditional ways of thinking about safe sleep, particularly in indigenous communities. And I'm really grateful for ways that that's helped me think more creatively and with more humility with families. So thank you for taking the time to think about how this might influence your practice and your conversations with families.